Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board, applicant teams. This is the December 20th, 2024 Design Review Board meeting. Go ahead and commence. Agenda item, let's see, Mr. Chair, would you like to get the ball rolling?
Yeah, let's call this one to order and get a roll call going.
Paige Anthony.
Present.
Rosemary Bright. Carol Clement. Cade Hayes.
Present.
Grace Shao.
Present.
Chris Stevie.
I am here. I guess meeting minutes is next. Make a motion to accept our meeting minutes and action report from last meeting.
Good morning, Chris. This is Carol. I just joined in.
All right. Get Carol on the...
Yeah, the minutes from the last meeting, there was a mistake in the tree call out. It said Multa, it should be Mulga. I think it was item number 2. I looked at it last night.
It was item number 4.
Yeah, it says MULTA. I think it should be MULGA.
That is correct.
Carol,
it should have been Mulga.
Yeah.
We get a motion that we accept those as amended by Carol. I guess I'll make that a motion. I make a motion that we accept those amended by Carol.
Yes.
The second, we'll drop a vote on there. Favor? Ayes.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, sounds like we're good on that, Gabriel. Call the audience is next, right?
That's correct.
So I'll make a call out to the audience. If there's anyone on this call that isn't associated with the cases today or with this board that would like to address the board for a minute, now's your opportunity. Hearing none, let's move on.
All right, item number 4 today is, let me go ahead and share the screen. Case number SD 1124-00112, the De Novo Market and Tap. The related activity numbers are shown on the agenda. The applicant's requesting that they're proposing to expand the existing De Novo Market at 177 North Church Ave into an outdoor serving area on the ground level of the south and east facades, including a 10-foot high shade structure with a guardrail surrounding the entire area with additional landscaping in the right of way. This project is located within the Rio Nuevo area. It's not included or eligible for inclusion in the National or Arizona Register of Historic Places. And at this point, I can turn it over to the applicant team if they would like to make a presentation.
Yeah, I guess, Gabriel, before we do that, is there any other city notes? Is there, that's your summary? I guess I missed that. You said there's no historic or anything like that. That's what I was kind of.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not a historic structure. It's not in a historic. The only applicable overlay is the Rio Nuevo area.
Okay. My coffee hasn't kicked in all the way yet, so I missed that. Yeah, let's let the applicant do their do their presentation to us, and we'll go from there.
I think Nicholas Ross has his hand up.
All right.
Hi, good morning, members of the board. Mr. Chair, I did want to just add one final kind of piece to the city summary on this case. It is currently going through an individual parking plan that has not yet been approved. So I believe comment period for the IPP is scheduled to close on January 2nd. So I did just want to throw that in there that we are still waiting on the parking reduction for this particular proposal. Thank you.
So Nick, since you mentioned that IPP, are there any city code requirements or items that we would be interested in as far as our purview that get waived or modified within that process that would kind of maybe supersede our or be important to what we need to look at today?
Right. Mr. Chair, no, the only relevance the IPP has on your purview really is the fact that they need it to expand their GFA. This particular property is located outside of the downtown parking district, just on the outside of it. So they don't qualify for some of the reductions that other properties in the downtown area do. So they're just going through the formal process to reduce that parking requirement.
Thanks for that. I know IPPs can be a bit onerous. So yeah, let's see what you guys do, and let's see if we can get through this one.
Okay, so my name is Jose Seham with X Architects. Good morning. You guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Good.
Yep.
Do I have access to that PDF? Or I have it on my computer unless I can share my screen.
Yeah, so the PDF is also on the Design Review Board webpage. I can go ahead and drop a link in the chat, and you'll be able to open it directly from there.
Okay, so I see it here. Okay. Okay, can you guys see it?
No.
Okay, have it open.
You have to share.
On Teams, up in the top right, there should be a share button. It's a rectangle with an arrow facing up inside of it. He hit the button next to it, it seems. Hi, Jose. You're muted.
Sorry about that. Okay, there you are. Sorry about that. Okay, so how do I share that? How do I show you guys the screen then?
So next to the leave
Share?
button, yeah, this is a rectangle with an arrow in it. You just click on
Gotcha.
that one, and then you should be able to click the either the monitor that has the file.
Uh-huh.
There you go. So if you click on the scroll up on this page.
This one here?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so
You need to click on it and open the file.
I see it. It's open on my screen.
Oh,
Sorry about
or
that.
you're sharing the browser window. There you go.
Okay.
Yep.
And if you would zoom in a little bit, that would be helpful.
Or do presentations.
That would be.
Is that better? Can you guys see it?
I would go in a little more.
All right. Apologize. This is.
You're good. We can, I mean, we can adjust our screen size too, and
All right.
if we need to.
All right, so I'm not sure if you guys are aware of it, that the Noble Market is actually open as we speak. So the space inside the tenant improvement, they've been approved, the people are running it. And so one of the things that they wanted to do is, as part of the Rio Nuevo expansion, is to add this outdoor seating area, trying to make this, trying to make the space a little more livable. It's pretty harsh out there during the day to sit out, and because of the sun exposure. And so we came out with several different options, but at the end of the day, we end up using this design because it was more relevant and also more economical. But I think it works really well. This shade structure kind of wraps around on the southeast corner of the building. The total space is about 1,500 square feet. We are proposing some guardrails to separate the space for alcoholic beverages, and of course having the columns and the shade structure to protect from the sun. We're also adding some, and I'm going to click here on this site. There's some existing planters already there that we're taking advantage of, and we're actually adding additional trees in that area to provide more landscaping and more shade at the property. The right of way is pretty large, so we're not impeding any kind of access for pedestrians to walk around the property on the south side or on the east side. And so that seems to be, that works pretty well. But again, it's a pretty simple structure. There's not much to it. And as far as the existing pavement area, or the walkway area where we're replacing this structure, we're leaving it alone. We're not touching it. We're not removing it. We're not replacing it. We're not changing any of it. So it works pretty well. So again, it's pretty simple. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer that.
Oh boy.
Do you have any plans for the landscape of what's going in or changes to the site other than this, and
No, we
other than
do.
this graphic?
So we did submit it, a landscaping plan with a development plan for the building official to review. And so we did submit a landscape plan as part of that. I mean, I have it. If you want me to share it with you, I have to find all my plans, but let me see. Let me
The
see if
last
it's on
page
it.
of this PDF has some landscape information.
Oh, here you go. Yeah, you're right. This is the one. So, and actually this is, yeah, so you can see, I don't know if you can see the picture, the image there. You can see the existing planters and the additional landscaping that we're adding to it.
Yeah.
There you go. These are the trees that we're adding to that space, and the type of landscaping there we're adding to it. Now, the structure actually somewhat separated from the building. It's not actually attached to the existing building. So in any case, in the future, if they decide to remove it, it's not going to have any effect on the building itself.
And I have a quick question for city staff. There was, on your summary, it said there was no historic and it's not an historic district. This plaza space on Alameda on the south side of this building is a historic site. It's placarded.
The courthouse?
No, this plaza space on Alameda, between Alameda and the face of the Transamerica building, where the existing sign is a historic site in Tucson.
I was not aware. That wasn't indicated in the GIS.
There's a ground mounted sign in that planter, right where the leader line says existing sign, pointing to that existing sign that's there. There's a ground mounted placard in that location.
Oh,
I haven't been to the market yet. I don't typically go visit every site in person, but this one's around the corner, so that I would say is an oversight on my part.
I'm not sure any of the elements that are there. I mean, the elements that are there physically are of the building era or modern time. So I think it's a placard that plaza space was had historic relevance as a location, not necessarily the elements that are there.
okay.
Got it. It's like a rectangle. It's like a copper rectangle.
Right.
Nick had his hand up. I think he has comments.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm not familiar with the sign itself. I'm trying to actually take a look on Street View. Maybe we could get a view there. But for the sake of zoning purposes, this is not a historic property, nor is it located within the historic zone. The building itself is not eligible to be historic. So for your review, this building would not be considered a historic asset.
This isn't in a historic zone, being directly adjacent to the original Presidio.
It's not. This is actually immediately outside of the historic zone associated with that. I can
Want to make sure we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's on that.
right, Jose. If you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for a moment. So we've got. Go ahead and turn on the imagery, some clarity.
Nice.
So this is the project site right here in the corner.
It's everything but this site.
Yeah, that's the historic zone over here, and in the historic layer. So I turn on signs, landmarks, and properties, and this is it's kind of like a little non-historic island in itself. It's not within a National Register district. It is within that Rio Nuevo area, but it's believe what 1961.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. The physical elements that are there are not historic themselves, but there is a placard in that planter bed that explains that was an important gathering space, or there was it has a name to that plaza space. But what it sounds like from the presentation so far that the physical aspects of that space aren't being impacted. And,
That's correct.
Yeah, there's no I guess city designation indicating that this is historic structure. And then there is, I think that maybe the plaque you're talking about, that is it that right there, or is that just like a water meter?
Oh, it looks like it's gone since this landscaping's been removed. It was right behind that concrete bench right in front of that the old illuminated sign. It used to be in that planter bed. Oh, there it is, right there. Yeah.
Can't get a better view than that. Okay, Jose, would you like to?
But I guess as long as that plaque is being maintained in its current location, then we can probably move on.
Yeah, we're not touching that area. So I mean, no.
Except for the new landscaping, trees and landscape that are going, irrigation that are going in that space, right?
Right.
Right. So I want to have that just noted somewhere on a plan that plaque needs to stay.
Okay.
Carol, you have your hand up?
Yeah, could the applicant go back to his presentation materials, or Gabriel? I have a couple questions. My first one being on the east aspect of the building, I don't think it's being impacted, but I just want to double check. There is a bas relief on the east wall. Is that's not being touched, correct? That's staying?
On the
Yeah.
east, how far to the, I mean, none of
Right
the-
there. We're looking
Correct.
at it.
Okay,
That
Sure.
bas relief. That, I think that was done by a person, Clement,
okay.
no relation.
Yeah,
But it,
no, no.
that is staying, correct?
That's staying.
Okay. And then if we could go to the planting plan again, please?
Sure.
Here, I'll go ahead and
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Okay, good. In the, yeah, you have what's shown to be 3 screw bean mesquites in planters. Now, those planters are existing, correct?
That's correct.
And they are bottomless. They go to the ground. There's no, I'm just double checking.
Right.
Okay. I screw bean mesquites get big, and these symbols are not drawn to their full size. I don't know. I'd like to hear what other members of the committee's thoughts are for the call out of screw bean mesquite trees being the selected tree for those planters. That seems big to me, because those symbols that are drawn are not drawn to full size.
Yeah, according to the landscape architect, those trees grow to be about anywhere from 15 to 20 feet. Ballpark, right? So,
Yeah, 20 to 25. They get big. I don't know. And they're gonna be, I don't know, it just seems like a. What do other members think?
I don't mind the choice of that
They're
tree.
in ground. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
They're in ground, yeah, Paige.
I think they would
Go
be
ahead, Dave.
fine.
Okay,
I just looked on the U of A listed as 15 to 20
Mhm.
feet, and they're probably I'm not sure if they're slower growing, but what size is this shown at?
that gonna give you an idea. So those
It's
those
somewhere
show
around there.
about like 10, I mean, about 10, 12 feet right now, the way they are.
so we can double that circle size.
Sure. I'll
Likely.
make sure that we revise the landscape plan and show the 15 to 20 feet. Or, you know,
I guess my only concern with the plant palette is there's two levels that I'm thinking of for this space. One is the height and scale of this building, and two, the age and design style of the building, and how the landscape would complement or detract from that. And that this is a pretty out of the, it's a pretty modernist structure. So having a smaller, stout screw bean mesquite, how does it fit with the scaling, the verticality of this structure? It's not going to provide a ton of shade, but which you're having as a major challenge on your site, right? So you're bringing in physical structure to provide shade to this western or this east and south facade, where have an opportunity to potentially go with a slightly different plant choice, but to either add to that shade or to create some sort of verticality with this building. You know, the palms that were in there before kind of brought that
Yeah.
verticality and human scale down. But you know,
Yeah, I agree with that comment, Chris. You're right.
I'm wondering how the palms got taken out, but they did.
So the reason for those trees also is to help with the actual shade study, because you need a certain amount of shade area on that south side and the east side of the building.
Okay. I know landscaping isn't necessarily a direct purview of you know, it's not on our checklist, but it's something we usually dive into in it seemed like the list you were using is desert adapted at least, and you know, is in line. Did they clean all the planters out, like the two pistache or whatever that are in the right of way? Are those there still? Those two little trees that keep getting butchered on the east facade? Looks like they're still there.
So, yeah, Mr.
those,
Chair, it says of August 24 right here.
Yeah, those two little trees are still there. That's a shame that the palms got taken out and those didn't.
Yeah.
Those are in the right of way, right?
These
So
are,
I guess,
yes.
Carol, back to your point, you know, it'd be nice to get a tree that maybe is a little larger than a screw bean mesquite in there to create a nice canopy cover within that plaza space, but we can just make that recommendation.
I like your comment about the verticality that the palms
There was some
provided. Yeah, it's a shame those were taken out.
Yeah, with the I mean, the building has a lot of vertical lines and you know, and it's one of the taller buildings in downtown too. So it's just a missed opportunity. I don't think there's much, truthfully, I don't think there's much comment on our end other than we'd love to see some alternate plant material in there, but do you have a shade study?
Yeah,
I don't see how this building wouldn't meet shade just from the sheer mass of it.
Well, I think they were shy on their shade requirement.
Yeah, especially because the shade study has to be done at a certain time of the day in June. So it was difficult to make it work. So we had to add a couple of more trees. So that's why actually we only had, I think, 2 trees on the south end, and we had to add another one.
So what percent shade I'm confused. You're getting shade coverage at 57% with the 3 trees on the south and the correct? Where are we at?
So yeah, I think we're about 50% right now with the trees on the south side and the trees on the east side, the existing trees that are there. Yeah, that's so I think we're barely making it, but it's it was really tight because there's so much when you do the shade study, you can see, and you put it at the time of the day, there's so much sunlight coming into it, into the south side of the building. It's hard to make that work, but that's why we added those trees.
Members of the board, I believe the shade studies, including the area outside of the right of way, as presented, there were some challenges. Well, there are some challenges shading the right of way area, given that it's on the it's on the northwest corner of this this intersection, and but you can see how the shadows kind of cant northwest. I confirmed myself with some shade tools, but at 12 o'clock noon on June 21st, which is the time we require applicant teams to provide their shade analysis, the sun is pointed pretty strongly northwest. The zenith of the sun in the sky is until about 12:25. So given that the direction of the sun is the direction of all the right of way, but yeah, just acknowledging that the city recognizes that there are some challenges meeting the shade requirements given the location of the site and the orientation of the sun.
But they meet 50.1%.
If you include the area outside of the right of way under the project structure itself, yes. Although at that point, it's enclosed and it's not really a semi-public space with
Oh, the
open
tunnel, you mean?
pedestrian access. No, it's the so the shade structure that's being proposed with the guardrail
okay,
so that
I
it
hear
can
you
be
saying.
an
I get it.
alcoholic service area.
Yeah, I get
Right.
it.
So that's being included.
Because it's
while,
not totally enclosed, right?
Right, because of the alcohol serving. We'd prefer developments like this sort of encourage a semi-public use of space, but given the constraints and requirements of presented by alcohol service in the state of Arizona, where it's got to be in an enclosed area like this, it wouldn't really be feasible as presented.
But the cantilever structures would be I don't know, in my opinion, would be the same as if we had asked for an awning, or if we'd asked, or if there was a projection coming off the building. In my opinion, right?
Right. So I believe
still the structure of the building, but
cantilever,
the solid wall of the building, the entrance to the building is set back from that, which creates shade in the public realm, right? If this project wasn't happening, that would be public space or semi-open public space. You're able to access that whole area.
So this entrance side,
Right.
this area right
entrance
here would be shaded.
Right, yeah, I don't know. I'm okay with considering that shaded public space. Grace, you're the architect on in the world, in our board right now. Is that? I think that's kind of okay.
Yeah, Kate as well, but
sorry, Kate's here too.
I agree that the shaded area under the awning outside of the building envelope should be counted in the calculation.
Yeah, I agree.
So as long as we're at 50%, I think we're good if we're even counting that space underneath. I think we just had is there anyone who opposes that idea on the board?
Could we go back to the planting plan? It seems
think
like
you get a better
the
tree then.
placement of the trees, yeah, and zoom. Okay, I'm trying to get more shade onto the sidewalk where people will actually be walking. The middle
Gonna be tough.
screw green mesquite in the planter to the left as viewed. I don't know if it could be moved more to the center of that part of the dog leg, it might cast a little more shade onto the actual sidewalk. You see, you guys, you understand what I'm saying?
I'm thinking the thing you're asking, Carol, is that if you combine the two thoughts I think you and I are having together, is if you looked at a tree that had a little larger canopy and you moved them as far south in those planters as was acceptable with the planting, then it would cast more shade on the public interface,
Yeah.
right? On the outside of the right of way. So-
Exactly. Thank you. I think the placement of the trees and perhaps another look at the
Right.
species call out might improve the shade cast to the actual sidewalk, the
Right.
public
right.
area where people will be walking.
I think this is one time in downtown we're probably asking for a bigger tree than asking to reduce canopy sizes for for accessibility. So I think you have an opportunity, team, to maybe bring in a more standard mesquite, or maybe even move it into the downtown street tree palette. And you might be able to revisit that tree and actually increase your shade component a little bit. But otherwise, do you have any other? Go ahead, Carol.
Chris, you guys know downtown better than I do. What are the trees directly to the east of here, across the street? What are the
Oaks, probably.
Yeah, probably oaks. The Virginia live oaks. Well, there's a mesquite.
Across the street. Oh, do you mean up here?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
those are oaks.
Yeah.
But even that, and in reality, if it's a happy, healthy tree, is a larger specimen than a screw bean mesquite.
Yeah, and a little more verticality.
Correct. And it would actually fit the time era of the building. So it might be a win-win-win there.
Mm-hmm.
They're just slow.
Yeah.
Do we have any other? I think we could. I'm not seeing a whole lot of, besides the shade on this one.
I had some
Grace?
questions about the structure. If you can go to, there's a color palette page. I think the yellow is quite fitting with the building, but it looks like they're proposing, like, is it galvanized? The columns, what are you thinking there?
No, they're going to be, they're still columns actually, and they'll be painted black.
Painted black. Okay.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to installing these, it seems like this is a good image to look at. Some of them are going to be in existing concrete, some brick, some in the planter. So how are those getting mounted?
Yeah, we actually have a construction document place. Let me see, hold on a second. What do we have this? 25. Yeah, those they're going to be actually it's going to have a steel plate anchored to a footing, and if I have a permit, submittal.
So we're going to need to do some selective demo to this existing hardscape in order to get those footings in, and then replace in kind. Is that the idea?
Yep.
Where there's brick, the brick will go back?
Yeah, the brick will go back. I mean, we just be careful to remove it and replace it when they reinstall it. So, but yeah, they have to dig up. They're going to have to dig out the footings. We're going to need footings for those.
Mm-hmm. There are a couple areas where the seating on the plan looks like it overlaps the edge of where those existing planters are. Are you proposing any sort of infill hardscape there?
Oh, you're talking about like this portion, like the one on the north. So most likely we'll just, no, we're going to leave the planters the way they are. We're going to have to shift the chairs around so they don't overlap the planter area. Is that what you're asking?
Yes. Yeah. That's.
Yeah. No. And again, we're gonna give a scenario of what the sitting area might be. It might be probably less, and they'll be adjusted somewhat, but they're not going to be on the planters.
Huh.
And the intent is not to modify the planter in regards to adding more hardscape.
Jose, I got just a quick question on the color of the steel that you're going to paint. You said it's going to be black. You said it's going to be black. The renders show white, so I'm just curious. The building is white and silver. How does everyone feel about the black?
Yeah, and actually, to the truth, we did the rendering with this color here, and yeah, we didn't talk specifically about that with the client, but you can see that you're right that the columns are somewhat white, and then the wrought iron on the bottom, their guardrails are kind of grayish color.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm just thinking in context to the whole building. I don't know that I have a strong opinion. I'm just curious if anyone else had an opinion on a black frame set against this white building. It's modern.
I wouldn't be happy about that.
And it'll be hot.
Yeah,
well, the building is very white and gray, you know, and silver. So
yeah, the only thing dark on there is
the way the rendering
glass.
is presented here is acceptable. I don't know why you would look at any other color scheme.
Yeah, we'll keep it the same color. We'll keep it the gray or the white color there. That way,
It's much more comfortable in the way that it's represented to the architecture.
Okay.
Any other conversation? I think we're. Am I hearing any other challenges or things we're having? Should we run through our checklist real quick?
Yeah.
We didn't do exterior lighting. Is there any exterior lighting being proposed underneath this shade area, canopy area?
No lighting.
No lighting?
No.
Is this business operating after business hours? Or
no,
I guess that would be a no if he took that literally. But
right.
Is this plaza space open in the evenings?
No, I think I believe they're open till either 5 or 6. They're not open beyond that.
Is there existing light in the cantilevered part of the building?
I would hope so, for safety lighting at least.
Yeah.
And to light up that cool
Map?
the
bas relief.
The relief. That's what I was like, what is it? The relief there.
Yeah.
Which is
It is cool.
Classically modern. So
Oh, so there's a street light there.
There is, but there's no plans to add any lighting to that structure.
Not for now.
With the addition of the shade structure and no additional night lighting, that could become sort of a dark area underneath there.
If the shades are pulled so they're actually providing shade, that would block ambient light from street and
right. Yeah.
Okay. I think we can add that onto a
CERN.
And this rendering is making it look like there is lighting.
Yeah.
So what are we getting here? What are we getting here? Because I'm starting to be concerned that the renderings we're being shown and the presentation we're being given are in conflict. That this rendering is showing, anodized with yellow, but there was mention of it being black. No lighting. This is showing lighting.
You're right.
What are we getting here?
So you're right.
What are we approving?
We're approving the rendering the way it is, with the exception of the lights.
No.
So we're gonna keep the same color scheme. We're not gonna do black. We just keep it the same color scheme that we have there. So we'll keep them either white or gray, kind of match the building, and then we'll do a gray color on the wrought iron.
Well, can you go to page 13, which would be your proposed building materials?
Yeah, that's where I'm at. You see it? Can you see my page?
I
Yes.
see it now, yeah.
Yeah, and the wrought iron fence doesn't match what's shown in the rendering, which isn't.
Colored per tenant.
Right. And again, if you and if you guys tell me that, you know, we need to make sure that it's a gray color, you know, we'll make sure it's a gray color. But
The design itself, the rendering.
and I again,
Well, but that's the where I'm heading is that this board is not the one. We don't tell you the colors.
okay.
We approve the colors presented, or say we don't approve the colors presented. We don't tell you what color to make something.
Gotcha.
It's not our
Okay.
it's not our purview to do design for you.
That's fine.
Huh.
Yeah, but I can tell you that we don't have any lighting. So, and I apologize for showing lighting on that rendering.
Well, I'm wondering why you don't have any lighting. It's actually it could be a nice ad. You could mount it on the columns if you really got around to figuring it out. But I think if we can go back to our checklist, I think we're starting to find a couple items that may spur conditions or parts of a motion. There's plenty of glass, so the interior, which isn't necessarily part of this improvement package we're looking at, is going to be visible when it's in business, right? You know, that business is fully glassed.
Right.
It's commercial. The entrance is well marked.
Yes.
You're going through the IPP, so vehicle circulation and parking. It's not a lot of new construction, right? The one I was getting back to was number 6, was some lighting in that space. I'm not sure what's underneath that existing space, the overhang area that's existing there. I think that has some night lighting. It's not totally dark. That would have been nice to be highlighted on a plan. And colors. The board have anything else?
Well, number 11, adequate shade provided for sidewalks.
Right. I think 11 is really a precursor to the, like, what is it, number 5 in the second group, or second set of criterion.
Oh,
Number 4.
number 4. Yeah, it's number 4. Thank you.
4B.
Yeah.
Our shade requirement, which we discussed already. If we include that overhang area, we should be okay on the shade.
Right.
But members, I think they can do better with their placement of the trees in the planters.
Correct. I think we're all, you and I at least, are in
Yeah.
agreement on they could rearrange the trees, maybe reevaluate the species provided.
Yes. You know, I'm concerned about these plans not matching what we're seeing in the rendering. I mean, we have a conflict of the layout of the seating in the plans with conflicting with the existing planters. We have the conflict with the iron fence between rendering and plans. I'm starting to, and we have the species and placement of trees. I'm wondering if we might want them to revise and resubmit. And the lighting thing. Yeah, there's several things. 4 things. I have 4 things.
I'll open that up to discussion. Any thoughts on that?
Sorry, I don't have my camera on. I should put my camera on.
No thoughts on that, huh? Just Carol?
Yeah.
How specific to requiring a resubmittal?
Or just coming
Oh, you're
back
asking.
with cleaner expectations of what they're presenting?
I'm sorry, was that a question, Chris? What was
Well,
that? Would you-
yeah, I guess Paige was asking, right? Paige, you're asking if we want to have them come back for a resubmittal?
Can
Or is
we?
all that worthy?
The lighting, to me, it seems the lighting is not being addressed as far as our purview is concerned.
And there's conflict between the rendering and the plans, and the applicant saying the rendering will prevail, but that's not the way it works out in the field.
Correct.
Right. Maybe could we go through the
Just hit all the-
two criteria that we're beholden to and make notes as we go?
Yep. I think that's
Yeah.
was kind of doing that quickly there to see if there's anything that really stuck out as a real big sore thumb, but let's just do them one by one. And I don't have a notebook with me in front of me, so if we catch up stuff, could someone please take some notes so we can review them when we get done?
I can try.
Okay, number one, proposed buildings. I wouldn't consider this a new building. Number two, new construction consistent with prevailing setback. We're not going to the right of way. It's not a new structure.
Thank you.
All new construction shall provide scale defining architectural elements to the first two floor levels. I believe this, this kind of doing that in a couple of different ways with the windows, columns, balconies. It's kind of bringing that facade down to a human scale. I kind of think they're hitting that one. I guess that's this whole project, right? They have plenty of glass.
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead.
I think we're good on that.
Okay.
I don't.
Yeah. I mean, I think the scale of the awning is good. I don't think Grace agrees or can provide comment.
If we do move towards a continuance or seeing this one again, it would be helpful to see the new structure on the elevation that includes the building. Right now we have existing building elevations, and then smaller awning or shade structure elevations. It would be great to better understand how they relate to, say, that like existing extension that comes off the east side and the lower element on the south end as well.
Right, I agree with that, Grace. I think the point we're kind of coming around to is we're depending on that rendering to be a construction drawing, and the construction drawings aren't necessarily backing up what's in that rendering.
Right.
I'm going to move on to number 4 with glass. The project at hand isn't providing any additional glass, but the existing commercial building there has pretty good amount of glass, making the building transparent. It's not a new building. We can't really change the architectural facade. Number 6, one we're stuck on, I think, shall provide pedestrian scale, down shielded, glare controlled exterior lighting. I'd like to get some confirmation that there's exterior lighting and how this space is lit.
Yeah, especially with the addition of the shade structure.
I would say so, yes.
Yes.
And an enclosed space that, even though it's just a small guardrail, that now creates, in my view, an enclosed space. You could probably corner someone in there pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Front door of the commercial and government buildings visible from the street. I don't know, my opinion, that building has one of the more iconic entries in downtown.
It's nice.
And I think that's how you get into this retail establishment or into this restaurant, is you go through the main lobby.
The east aspect is the main entry, correct?
To the building, right?
Yeah, right. And that's the entry to the new outdoor space, right?
From the plan,
Yeah,
it looks
through-
like you don't go through the main lobby.
No,
The
you
entrance
don't
is
go to the
slightly to
lobby.
the south.
Yeah, you don't
They have
go
their
to the
own.
lobby.
They have their own door.
They do.
Oh.
And this goes back to, even if their hours are open during daylight, it seems like we need to know what the lighting is for the entrances.
Yes. And how that entrance is indicated and separated, or how it's indicated in to make sure it's not, people aren't going in the main entry, right? How it's individualized.
Okay.
So that would be a note there. Exterior historic buildings shall complement the overall historic district of downtown. I don't think this is a traditionally historic building, but and we went through that it's not technically a historic building, but it is a pretty iconic facade in downtown. I don't think this project detracts from that, which I think is positive for it. Any thoughts on that?
As long as it's not black.
As long as it's not black, right?
Yeah.
I think black would be a bad decision for that space.
The architecture, even though it's not historic, it kind of is. Not legally historic, or
I have a feeling it's
recognized
going to go historic pretty soon here. That's a pretty strong modernist building.
Is this where the conflict in the railing would come in?
Yeah, either this or yeah, it was like 12 or 13 also.
Yeah.
Carol.
Yeah, okay.
Number 9 is new buildings shall be to shield adjacent buildings and private rights of ways from heat and glare. I think this project's adding shade, so it's hopefully changing the glare and heat in that space. Vehicle parking, they're in an IPP process to get waived for parking requirements. 11, adequate shade provided all sidewalks. We had a good discussion about that, and we're going to hit that on 4B.
Okay.
Colors, the overall palette of context of downtown. I think in this part of downtown there, as long as we, I think that's a provision of this plan. I'd like to see a more defined what is going to be used. Notes like color per owner on the actual plan set concern me.
Yeah, I think those have to be defined and not per tenant, because that leaves it open.
Correct. New buildings shall use materials, patterns, elements to relate to traditional context of downtown. This isn't a new building, but this building itself kind of stands in contrast to traditional context of downtown, and I think we're doing okay there. 24-hour street level activity. We're not getting 24-hour, but I think it's going to help increase street activity on that corner during business hours. I see that.
I
as
think if there
beneficial.
was lighting, would support that.
What was that page? You went in and out.
Oh, sorry. I feel like that kind of goes back to the lighting also.
Mhm.
If there
Correct.
would be the lighting on the building, that would support 24-hour street level activity.
Or at least
Safety.
better light up that plaza space.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Did we ever look at what the existing entry lighting is yet? Have we looked at that? What is the existing entry lighting? Thank you.
Those two silver cans, right? Or the ones that go right down the middle.
That's to the lobby, so I think my understanding is the market is that door right there. Yeah, that one.
So there is,
There's an LED light up or fluorescent light up on top. You see the square rectangle on top of the soffit.
oh,
Yeah,
okay,
Yeah.
okay. So those are just down lights.
Yep.
And are those 24-hour down lights?
I'm not sure, but I can check.
Okay. It's a cool building. Look at that. That's cool.
Super cool.
It is one of the cooler entrances to the building downtown. I think our other purviews 1, 2, and 3 on the other list are, or 1 and 2 at least, are vehicle and parking. I think we can skip those on this one. Plazas and open spaces is our thing.
Yep.
I don't see. There is improvement to the landscaping area in this existing plaza space outside the guardrail area.
Yeah.
And there's existing benches in that space that are not being impacted, at least per this plan.
This is unrelated, but maybe back to the parking, and I know they're going through IPP, but part of number 10 on the previous list has bicycle parking. Is that part of the IPP?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, the bicycle parking is not being waived in this particular individual parking plan request. I will add, though, that due to the size of the expansion, it's not 25% or greater. So this is not a full code compliant site so they wouldn't be required to add anything additional there.
And just from experience, I know there's 2 hoops on the east side and I think 3 on the south side. So
okay,
there's actually, I think, more street parking. There's 1, and I think there's another one on. Wasn't there another one with that one?
yeah,
There's 2 over there between the trees, and then there used to be a couple on this south side. Maybe they're farther to the left. Yeah, there they are.
got it.
Okay.
Cool.
It helps to have driven or drawn and catted out that space for a different project once in my life. So
Yeah.
I kind of know where all the things are. So I think, in my opinion, we're pretty good on 3A. Is there any opposition to that opinion? It's not new development, but I think they're enhancing this space.
I'm wondering about the existing benches. We saw the on the street view there. That one, I thought there had been previously a table, concrete table and chairs, I believe. There you go.
Yeah, there used to be tables and chairs in there.
So
But those
I
are
didn't know if there's other benches on the east. And where I'm going is that maybe I'm not sure if that existing bench is shown on the plans. But it could be if it's going to remain and maybe additional bench would help activate this for 24 hours, and it would kind of support number 3, and then also the 24-hour note.
So
Paige, I'm having a hard time understanding you. Could you speak more directly into your mic? That's okay.
I have, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm using my phone and my computer, and
oh,
so there's the existing bench, and I don't recall if that was shown on the plans, but it should be if that's going to remain. And then the table and seating that's been removed, I'm wondering if it should be replaced in kind with another bench to support this street level activity plaza activation in that area, since the new addition is really not public, per se, and it's such a wide right of way.
Right.
You're referring to that bench on the south side?
Yeah.
The concrete bench next to the trash can.
Yeah, it's right there. You can barely see it on the plans, but we're not touching it.
Okay, that's good.
I think it's technically in the right of way, right?
Yeah, it is on the right of way.
Boy, it's a shame those palms got removed. How did that happen?
With the chainsaw, probably, Carol.
I know. It's like, who did that? I mean, they're almost, I consider them almost historic with the building.
Almost is the key word.
I know. It's a shame.
Almost, yeah.
We're a little butchered in this this image.
That's how we do it.
They're not providing much shade, but
yeah, but they just bring the height of the building down to the street level. You know, they worked.
So hopefully we can get some new landscaping in that space. That, well, they even took the tree out. There was an existing shade tree in that space.
What was it, a bottle tree?
I think it was a bottle tree, Carol. I think your comment page about adding another bench, or I think in our comment set, maybe language around coordinating with the city to have another bench added in there, because it would technically be within the right of way that the city might be able to provide a bench from elsewhere, or provide another one of those concrete benches to match, because those are a city bench. I don't know if you can buy that bench. Would that make sense, Paige, to what your comment is to?
Add another bench to the plans. Is that what you're saying, Chris?
Yeah, maybe in this planter to the right, to balance, have a bench at each planter.
Yeah.
To engage the right of way outside of this
right.
This area that's now kind of a quasi private space.
Right. Maybe go back to the planting plan to see if that idea is feasible. The proposed planting, or just let it. Yeah.
If you look at the plan on that, your planter on the second planter to the right is farther into the right of way. So I'm not sure if you're going to be shrinking that space any smaller. It looks pretty wide, but.
Well, if you
go ahead, Joe.
I think the leader that says it's existing sign, that's the existing bench, correct?
Right.
Okay, so if we go to, we're not supposed to design this for you, but if you go to the other planter to our right as viewed, and you could just put another bench parallel to that brick edging there, under the shade of the tree. Would that work?
But that's on the right of way, though. I'm not.
That's where I'm thinking that our the general idea of the comment that I'd like to make is that this applicant coordinate with the city to see if there's opportunity to add a bench along that other planter.
Yeah.
Or even on the east side planter, or add. I think the comment really is to add additional seating within the space outside of the guardrail, whether it's in the right of way or whether it's on the private property side of to engage this overall plaza space more. Right, Paige? Is that?
Yes.
I think there's room to even maybe keep that concrete table if that isn't totally destroyed at this point.
Also, CDI Concrete Design is here in town, and they manufacture that bench, is my
Right.
understanding.
Yeah.
So I think if we add a comment like that, the genericness of it is that there's opportunity to provide additional seating outside the restaurant to engage the general public space. Per what is that 3A?
Mm-hmm.
And view sheds, I don't know if we have any challenges there. You can definitely look out into other public spaces there. Linkages.
Will the blue line be maintained?
It's turquoise, Carol.
Turquoise, I'm sorry,
Oh.
I'm sorry. The turquoise line, of course. That won't be impacted, correct?
No.
Okay.
Right away.
Yeah, okay. So here we are.
Streetscape design priorities given to pedestrians. I think within this space, the right of way is still wide open. There's plenty of room to move and navigate around here. Shade structure seems like they're meeting the shade. If they increase the canopy size on a tree, they would give them an extra 0.5% probably.
And also relocate so that it's casting more shade onto the
Sidewalk.
Yeah.
Right.
The public use area. Mm-hmm.
So I think just from that, just running through those, I think we had 3, maybe 4 things that we had concerns about. Is it lighting, benches, trees and shade?
Yeah.
And the black and
Or
the
colors and making the plans match the rendering.
Right. The seating conflict with the planter. That I know they can move chairs around, but I don't know.
I don't know.
We'll adjust it.
Yeah, that's gonna get adjusted in the. I mean, it's kind of. I'm okay.
If they're not surface mount or indoor mount, then they're going to be moved.
Yeah,
right?
if they're not surface mount, it's just a massing diagram at that point. So we had four items. Is that enough to ask for a return? I think 4 items is a lot to add as conditionals.
Yes, I agree.
Someone want to make a motion on that? I think we're asking them to come back.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, for asking them to come back.
Someone want to?
I'm just kind of spitballing this motion here. I don't know if this is
acceptable. Yeah. You need to just transcribe as we go, right? Let's.
Yep.
I think this is as simple as noting that we don't find the project in compliance. They need to come back. And our conditions are I don't even know if we need to make conditions, but we can add them for clarity to the applicant.
Or perhaps just keep the categories that Gabriel has written as
Correct.
areas that we want to see revised, or whatever wording.
I'm trying to remember
so
in these situations before if we make a motion or if making a motion moves it off of our agenda.
it moves, if we make a motion that they're not in compliance, they can either appeal, go ahead to the board, to the zoning, and or come back.
Okay.
Like they can move on. They can move on and still try at the next level, or come back again. Or we can do as we did that last set of meetings. We can continue them on if they are willing to revise drawings and get them back to us for another.
Yeah, we'll definitely revise the drawings and resubmit to you guys if that makes it easier.
We can continue this like
I
we
think
did that
that's
last
what
one.
we want to do, correct?
I would think so.
Yeah. So do we, I'm sorry, I get confused here, Chris. Do we make a motion or do we just say continuance? What do we do here? I always get confused here.
We just did this like 2 weeks ago too.
I know.
Like,
I know.
I can't remember. I think we did a motion to that to continue, and that we set a date or left it to staff to set a date that worked for the board, and for that other one had a time contingent part. So I think on this one it would just be our next scheduled meeting.
How soon can you guys meet again?
When's our next meeting?
I think it's the 6th, 7th.
Early January.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think, yeah, second Friday in January is the 10th. So either the 10th and 24th.
So let's get a motion to continue this so applicant can revise the plans to show clarity on additional lighting, seating and benches, and making sure the colors and materials match on the construction drawings, match the renderings.
And
revise any planting they find appropriate, i.e. shade trees.
And placement of those shade
Correct.
trees.
So besides the placement of the trees, you're not okay with that tree selection, correct?
We're not necessarily opposed to it, but I think you have an opportunity to provide additional shade if you have your landscape designer look at alternative species.
Okay.
And it's not, I never think it's a bad idea to look at what is planted in adjacent areas.
There's a couple big mesquites in this, the courthouse south and the oak trees directly across the street.
Right.
Right on. Does someone want to provide this motion for continuance?
I can read it. So just, should I read what Gabriel's writing?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing it a little backwards, but yeah, that was it.
Okay. The board has reviewed the applicant's project for compliance and are making a motion to continue the submission so that the applicant can provide clarity on lighting, seating in the public realm, and ensure that materials and details match the renderings and construction drawings, and to revise the placement of shade trees based on evaluation of species, perhaps with a larger canopy, and the location of those trees to provide more shade for the public right-of-way. Is there anything else I should add?
Did we hit lighting?
I mentioned that.
Okay.
It's in there.
Yeah.
I'll second that motion. Any discussion? Amendments? Let's put that to a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Sounds like we're continued. Gabriel, can you work with the applicant to set up submissions and dates and what their back out times are for making sure they get on the next agenda?
It will do.
All right. Anything else, guys?
No, thanks, Jose, for your time. I think it's.
Oh, thank you, guys. I
They
apologize.
seem like
We'll
pretty.
get that
They seem
taken
like
care
pretty
of.
minor things, but they're things that we get caught on with a lot of applicants. And
Not a problem. We'll make sure that we'll take care of it. And I apologize for the discrepancies on that. We'll take care of it.
Thank
no,
you.
it's
Thanks, Jose.
All right.
want to
Gabriel,
support
I'll
your
wait to hear-
project and help you get there. So help
Okay,
us.
no problem.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate that. Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Happy holidays.
Oh, Carrillo House. Oh no.
And so we
Be
begin.
easy. I swear it's going to be easy.
Can we just skip
Yeah.
ahead and continue? No, I'm just kidding.
We're on a roll with
Gabriel,
this one.
Gabriel, give us a summary of where we're heading on this one.
Sure. So the applicant is proposing the restoration of the exterior of the existing Sosa Carrillo Fremont House building and the site within the TCC campus. This includes a restuccoing of the facade of the building, repair and remediation of lead paint on windows and doors, rehabilitating the rear portion of the building to comply with ADA requirements, replacing the roof, replacing the concrete driveway and sidewalk on the south side of the property, and incorporating additional landscaping in the front and backyards, some hardscaping, pedestrian facilities on site, remediation of drainage issues, and the installation of interpretive signage. The subject property is located within the Rio Nueva Area Overlay Zone. The Sosa Carrillo Fremont House is an individually listed historic structure. It's not within an actual historic zone itself. This was reviewed by the Tucson-Pima County Historic Commission Landscape Subcommittee on December 5th, who they accepted the plan as presented. They gave some recognition of the historically sensitive work of the team. On December 12th, the Tucson-Pima County Historical Commission's Plans Review Subcommittee recommended approval of the project, finding the landscape and shading strategies as presented to be adequate and responsive to the historical conditions and overall context of the TCC campus, with the following condition. Areas around the adobe wall foundation shall be exposed and kept free of hardscape and vegetation to ensure the long-term preservation of the adobe walls, and that hardscape materials and geometry in the central plaza should be refined to more strongly delineate the historic boundary of Main Street. Context there. So Main Street used to run north-south, kind of directly in front of the Sosa Carrillo house. That street's gone now, and the street to the west is Granada, which is pushed quite a bit further away from the Sosa Carrillo house after some vehicular use area and driveways, parking. And I see it's kind of the staff summary if the applicant team would like to make a presentation.
Yeah. You want me to start here?
Yep, and you can share your screen,
Mhm.
or if you like, I can share mine and kind of jump around as you present, but you're able
No,
to.
I'll share, yeah, because I've got everything pulled up here.
Cool.
Yeah,
You
Michael,
guys
go
see
ahead and give
that?
it an overview. That's fine.
Cool. You guys see my screen okay?
Yep.
All right. Well, good morning. Thanks for your time. My name is Michael Becker. I'm an architect and partner with Swam Associates. Eric Baird's here with me as a landscape architect with Art Studios. Rio Nuevo a couple years ago to start working on a restoration of the Sosa Carrillo house. And I'll go through this relatively quickly, and then we can backtrack and go through your comments and questions, because there's kind of four main areas that we're looking at with this project, and that's the west lawn, the rear courtyard, the restoration of the adobe, and then the ADA renovations. And I'll give a quick overview. I know some of this is kind of outside of your focus, but just to give you a sense of what we're doing and why we're doing it. A little bit of history. The house was from the mid 1800s, probably 1850. We were doing some initial investigations on the foundations. We found 5 different foundations under the building, which is pretty typical for buildings this old. As flooding would come through from the Santa Cruz, it would take out existing structures and they would rebuild on top of it. So we can definitely see that there was something built on this site for quite some time. But this house has been intact on site since at least 1880. It does show up on the Sanborn Fire Insurance maps. It was completely restored in the early 70s and substantially its current form. It was much more of a typical transitional Sonorian in the 1960s, and it was the restoration brought it back to more of a straight tradition, a straight Sonoran row house. It is on the National Register. It's individually listed. It was saved in the late 60s in the urban renewal project that was the TCC campus. So in this aerial, this Google Maps aerial, you're seeing the entire TCC campus. This little white dot is the Sosa Carrillo house, kind of dead center in this campus. Up until 2 years ago, the house was owned by the Arizona Historical Society. Due to state budget cuts, they no longer had the budget to maintain the structure. We, meaning Swaim Associates, was asked by Rio Nuevo to manage the $65 million restoration and renovation of the entire TCC campus. And this postage stamp in the center of the site was excluded because we did not have the ownership. Rio Nuevo approached AHS and ended up purchasing the property. And that's when we were brought on board to incorporate the property both into the campus and then also to restore the property. There are 2 tenants in the building right now, Los Descendientes and the Borderlands Theater Company. Their leases have both been extended, and Los Des has actually gotten a Mellon grant for $500,000 to contribute to this restoration. So they will be here, and a big part of what we're doing is to give them the opportunity to create programming around sort of urban renewal and the barrio and what happened, considering this is this kind of fragment that's left within this larger campus. Couple more notes. The house is the campus has its own PAD. It's silent on historic preservation, so that's why we fall under the Rio Nuevo area review for this particular review. That happened with the Lot A garage. You might remember we brought that one to you as well. And the only thing it does say in that document about the Sosa Carrillo house is that we have to maintain the view from Granada to the front of the house. So we're not building anything in the west lawn, but we are doing some renovations. So now this is a little closer in. That is actually the property boundary, which is creating some issues for us that we want to talk about with the shade study, and we'll get to that in just a minute, because it is considered a separate property still from the overall TCC campus. The just real quick images of the context. You can kind of see the front of the house there. I'm sure most of you are familiar with it, but if you're not, this is the kind of current condition of the house. Let me zoom in a little bit. The front yard is fairly barren. There are a few existing trees and a flagpole. That's picture of the chimney. This is the back courtyard here. And then let's see. This is the view to the north. So there's the new garage and then the music hall there as well. Let's see. So I'm trying to navigate these documents. Yeah, that's it on that one. What we did when we started this project, so this is a little tighter aerial that's showing where the property boundaries are. And the red lines, these vertical lines you're seeing are the original alignment of Main Street. So like was mentioned, during urban renewal, Main Street was removed from the campus. It used to run straight through this site. There was a sidewalk in front of the social, and then there were houses on the other side of the street. So the approach that we've taken is to sort of bring some of that fabric back to allow the tenant, Los Descendientes, to use the site for some enrichment and fulfillment and education activities. To do that, what we did was go back through we found this old aerial. It's a little fuzzy, but we aligned it as best we could with the information that we had. You can see the outline of the original house there. It's still there. It's distinctive because the house is actually not square, which everybody thinks it is, but it's a sort of trapezoidal. So we got a pretty good match. You can see the buildings across the street, the shadows of them as far as we can tell. We sort of traced those to begin to reinterpret the site and overlay some new gardens in the west lawn, and then a new plaza that will reinterpret Main Street. So that's kind of where the geometry of all this is coming from, just to give you some context of what we're doing. Our intent, what we don't know, is when they bladed all of this in the 60s, if they took, how far they went down. So if we get out here and start finding real foundations, we're going to revise this plan to emphasize what's actually there. But what we've chosen to do with that geometry is create a series, basically a plaza that would have been Main Street. It's a couple of gardens. Currently, they're called out as DG, but what we would like to compact to DG, but what Los Descendientes is working on is finding a partner, possibly Mission Gardens, to do some more vegetable gardens, to talk about the history of the barrio and the kinds of things people would grow. We know there were quince orchards and some other things in the area, so we want to give some opportunities for that to happen in these two north spaces. The central number 2 there is an existing fountain that was put in probably in the mid 70s. They have been raising money to restore that, and we were asked to keep that in place. So that's remaining where it is. We're not moving it. It's staying in its current location. Number 4 down here is a small plaza where they can put they're selling bricks to raise the money. So this will be paved with bricks, similar to match the backyard, the courtyard in the back, and they will replace those bricks with donor bricks as they raise money. The Central Plaza, number 10 here, is this kind of reinterpretation of Main Street as best we can kind of find it between all these different aerials that we've been using. And again, we're going to use a compacted DG for that as well. It's an accessible surface, but it also, the period that we're thinking about in terms of pre-1900, it would have been a dirt road. So we think the compacted DG makes some sense in terms of that reinterpretation. The comment from the Historic Commission was about extending these lines of the street all the way to the property boundary to go ahead and make that even more obvious and make it a more clear that that was a geometry that cut through this site, and that this site sort of removed that previous grid of the street. So whether we extend the header curb or we're still figuring out, I think, exactly how to do that. The circulation for the house is, from the west, if you're coming from the west parking lot, you would basically go straight through the plaza into the house. Coming from the north, we have a couple of connections from the music hall. This north walkway is a central spine throughout the campus. So they're sort of peeling, we have a lot of traffic coming from the music hall and the central plaza. So we have a couple opportunities to bring people in from the north. And then the same from the south. We are controlling the access basically into this Main Street space, and there's also a grade difference, so there is a bit of a change here. And we also wanted to kind of control access to bring people into the plaza space and not using this to pass through the site, so that it could be used for events. That's really what we want to use it for. The house is here. I'll talk briefly about that, kind of how we're treating it, and then I'll talk about the backyard for a second, or in a minute. But Eric, do you want to talk about the landscaping before we move on?
Yeah, sure. So the landscape is, we're trying to pull on from what we've done at the rest of the campus and also enhance it for maintaining the plant species diversity that would have been representative of the barrios themselves. As Michael noted, working with Mission Gardens and other clubs to see about bringing in unique species for planting of what someone would have in their backyard. So that west side of the street representing more or less additional barrio type structures and the plantings with that. And then really we try to pick up on the formality of the planting that was done by the historical landscape architect ECBO in maintaining mass species and planting to define space and help reduce the possibility of people just kind of crossing through the site and really directing their focus. So, and then we have we're showing obviously on the west side of the street, we're showing 2 trees to help provide shade on the plaza, especially for the afternoon sun, from more afternoon sun shade, and then working with some existing trees to remain those and keep those in place. And then out by the street frontage, we are proposing new additional olive trees that would have been another type of more of a edible source or a food source for the earlier periods, but knowing we can't provide true olives and be not friendly in that aspect. Other than that, I can dive into more species, but I mean,
Yeah.
Chris and Carolyn know the species very well, so I don't need to dive into that in too much great detail.
Yeah, maybe we'll just run through everything and then we can come back and that just give you guys the full picture. So, sorry, someone say something?
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. We'll go through the whole thing and then I would like to come back to the planting plan, of course.
Absolutely.
Thank
you. So these double lines you're seeing, those would be seat walls, and those are a kind of a slump block with a precast cap just to keep them distinct from the Adobe building, but then also, clearly sort of being interpretive of those original features. We do have some header curb where these planting areas meet the actual landscape areas. And then one main feature, and you'll see this as we go around the house, is we are maintaining on 3 sides of the house. There are very few plantings and there is very little hardscape, and that's to let that adobe breathe and let the foundation breathe and air out. It's one of the issues we have right now. We have a lot of rising damp in the existing adobe. So we don't want to repeat that in the next 50 years. So we're going to maintain that sort of ventilated area right against the building, so we don't have irrigation or plantings directly against the building. As far as lighting, what we're doing, if you've seen this before in terms of the overall TCC campus, this is kind of the light fixture that we've been using out there. We are going to use a similar fixture for general lighting. We use this fixture as a sort of as invisible a light source as we could find. And what we'll be doing on this side is not having the concrete base that you're seeing here. This base would be flush with the dirt. This photograph is on Church, so we raised these to protect them from vehicles, but in this context, because it's interior to the site, this would be flush with the ground. So all you would see is this, this very simple pole. You can see the historic lighting behind it. We're not moving any of those historic lights or relocating into this particular site. The reason we like those lights, and you can see in these drawings where it's been implemented, there are actually 3 of those lights in this photograph, and we set them kind of near the tree line so that they really start to disappear as much as possible, and lets the kind of the historic and the original nature of the site be more obvious. Here's another photograph where we've got, there's actually 2 in this photograph. There's one here and there's another one back there. And we think it's pretty effective in disappearing, but then providing that base level of safe lighting that we need. So within this site, we'll be providing 5 of those to light this kind of the western part of the lawn. And then we had a challenge trying to figure out how to light this plaza effectively. And again, going through the historic record and the historic photos, there was a period around this time when in different parts of town, you would see these suspended fixtures over the street. And, based on what we're trying to do and kind of what makes sense to light an area of this size, we would use these two light poles to run a cable to another pole adjacent to the house and then suspend a fixture over that plaza to provide the plaza lighting. And we think, it will be a modern fixture. I haven't found the right one yet, honestly, but it would clearly be a modern fixture. So we're not trying to make it look like something that used to be there, but we think it's within the historic geometry, and again, plays into the idea of bringing back, letting this site be this like little glimmer of what used to be here within this sort of overall context of the TCC campus. To go on to the house itself, I don't want to get into too much detail because I know it's already been a long meeting and you guys have limited sort of influence on this, but you can see that the thicker walls of the existing Adobe or the original Adobe structure, that's going to be fully restored. We have on the exterior, we have Eric Means, who's a local Adobe expert, working on this with us. We are taking off the cement plaster that was put on the Adobe in the 70s, and that's what's causing a lot of our problems. And putting on lime plaster back on the building. The two corners are sinking a bit, which is not unusual for a building this age. So we will be digging out under there. We'll be putting in new foundations and then putting all that back together. So in addition to that, we'll be fully restoring the doors and windows. We'll take out the existing material, salvage what is usable, and then put them back together with new material as necessary. And then we'll have a new roof on the house. We're hoping to find an integral color plaster so we don't have to paint the building again. But if we can't get the color consistent enough, then we'll investigate painting. But right now we're considering an integral color plaster. The other changes to the house, this whole back side is what was added in the 70s. None of this is part of the historic structure. We're basically keeping the roof line, so the appearance of the building won't change, but we are reconfiguring it substantially to provide two accessible restrooms, fully accessible restroom, a fully accessible break room, sort of kitchen, and then an adequate mechanical room to get the systems operating properly. So that's really the extent of what we're doing for the house. For this backyard, again, it's fully brick, it has brick pavers throughout now. We're going to pull all of those pavers up, re-level the site, and then we're going to connect the existing downspouts. There are 3 of them, somewhere around there. We're going to run pipe underground and connect them to a storm catch basin that's right here. They go straight to the storm sewer. Currently, we have an issue with just water collecting in this space. We're going to get rid of all that water and get it out into the storm sewer so that, again, it doesn't work its way back into the house and cause more damage. There are 3 fruit trees back here, the main one of which is this fig, which it's a gorgeous old fig, which we're going to maintain in place and make sure that it's protected. So those 3 planters will stay. There's a planter here, but it has a kind of dead citrus in it, and it's always interrupted this space is functioning well as a small event space. So we're going to remove that one planter, but we're not removing any historic material with that. And then as far as the elevations, we're not changing the appearance of the building whatsoever at this point. And that brings us to the shade study. So we are, for this postage stamp of a site, we are under the shade area. We're only at 36%. Our contention is, and the historic plans review subcommittee agreed with us that our planting plan is appropriate for the historic structure. We would also point out that as part of the larger campus of the TCC, which is what we really consider it, we're at
56%.
56%. So the design team, we feel we are in compliance with the shade requirements when you look at the campus, but technically we are not in compliance when you just look at this particular parcel. I want to be very upfront and honest about that.
And also, I would add to that if there was a special event on Main Street, the repurposed Main Street, that those would be temporary structures that would be brought in and taken back out. We were not.
Yeah.
Anything that we try to put in permanently would be a detraction from maintaining the historical context.
So then, the last thing is just sort of some of the materials. There is a little window that shows the mud adobe. We're going to maintain that because it's a nice sort of enrichment education opportunity. We'll be redoing the plaster. These are the condition of the doors right now, and some of the exterior masonry. Then we have the planting palette, and we can come back to that. And then some of the the compacted DG, the slump block seat walls, things. Yeah. So I think did I miss anything, Eric? I think that was.
Nope, you got it all.
I got it all. All right, so let's go back because I think that's probably where we want to start. And yeah, we'd love to hear your comments. And yeah, we're super excited to get this thing going. So.
Yeah.
I'll open it up.
Well,
Carol, sounds like you're chomping at the bit, so go ahead.
I am. Okay, I like your plant lists. The call out, Eric, beautiful. It's appropriate to me. The olives, the pomegranates, interesting on the Celtis reticulata. When I first looked at his plans, I thought the Celtis reticulatus were maybe the olives, but whatever. What I'm missing, and maybe it's because I'm not seeing the entire plant list, is the Opuntia ficus indica. What's the common name on that, Chris? The spineless Opuntia. Why don't
Indian
you have
fig.
that? Yeah, the edible Opuntia.
So, well, there is right now there's an existing pot that's got the old, really large prickly pears. And we were gonna
Yes.
take that and put that one back in. We were not putting back in
Okay.
any other Indian figs. That's what you're asking about. And that's located basically as kind of a border separator. It's located right, there's a Keynote 9 on the north side of the building. There's one.
Oh, okay.
No, go north, go further north, the next Keynote 9, sorry, and now southwest, sorry. I can't point on screen. There you are. There's where the so basically being kind of a separator, so really try to impact the people there that would consider jaywalking across the site to direct flow.
Yes.
There
and
is a hackberry that's on site that would fall literally in the northeast corner of the street. And so
Oh.
therefore we are removing it and putting in the 2 new hackberry trees.
Right. Now, you're shy on your shade. Why? I understand you don't want to block the view of the beautiful historic building, but if you were to put 2 more trees in the, let's see, the other 2 corners of your Main Street Plaza, I'm going to call it that for now, that would get you closer to your shade requirement. So I don't
On the east side of the street?
Correct. Yeah. Right. Like, well, but pulled away. I totally respect pulling it away from the building, and that to me actually helps with the indication of the old Main Street rather than running the curbs out to the edge of the property. That to me speaks very much to the street. Maybe those wouldn't be trees. Maybe those would be the large Opuntia ficus indicas, something to note those 4 corners of Main Street.
Yeah, we definitely do want to do trees because we, with the adobe, we know the trees would actually end up being and growing in the adobe. So we don't want the plant species in front of that is basically to help to define Main Street, like you're noting. And being a very low water use succulent, almost no water use succulent, kind of defining that edge of the street. Adding some additional Indian figs or something like that is a possibility.
As at the 2 corners, big species. Indian figs are arborescent cacti when they get big.
No, understood. Yeah.
with regards to the backyard, okay, your downspouts are being dumped into the sewer directly. I understand you want to keep water away from the building, but that whole backyard, the planters look sort of a mess existing. Why don't you clean those up and take your downspout collected water to those planters and put in an alley of citrus that would look better?
It's a fair comment. So the whole building drains from west to east. And so we are collecting
Okay.
all the roof water onto the brick pavers, and then the historical context of drainage and everything, it basically flows into the catch basin that's on the southeast corner of the site. So
Correct.
the planters are existing. We're modifying one of them. The other two we're just extending towards the wall. The material is at grade. And quite honestly, I don't want to get into that fig. We were trying to avoid the fig itself. It's basically kind of grown and dropped back down and rerouted, and it looks like 3 trees when it's really just 1 tree. But
Which
it's a
one is the
series of trees.
fig in the plan?
That one there.
No, go to the plan. Was it the more southern
It's
planter?
the southern one, correct?
Yeah, okay.
All right.
S-
Yeah,
big one.
that's this one.
Yeah, so
Okay,
it shows
and
like
that's
3
the
trees there.
fig.
It's really 1 tree, but there's like the trunks are like I said, it's like grown, re-dropped back down, rerooted and regrown. And we are not touching that. What we are
Okay.
doing is pulling the planter out, squaring it up, and then really defining a small seat wall along the edge there.
So you're keeping the seat wall.
We are, yes, the face of it.
Is-
that
We're
edge-
modifying it. We're modifying it.
Okay, is the soil level in for the fig at the top of the seat wall?
Nope,
Or
it's
is
at
it dropped
grade.
below? It's at
It's at
grade.
grade.
Mhm. I'm just trying to get water directly to that planter rather than taking the downspouts and dumping it into the sewer.
There's no way to do that and not adversely affect the overall drainage of the site. Trust me, if I could do water harvesting in the fashion that I would like to do it, we would. We're not messing around with the historic structure at all.
Okay. Oh, I see that you're using wood chips. You know my feelings about wood chips. They float away and they also harbor scorpions. Great habitat for scorpions. I know it's the new movement in landscape these days, but I think it's a bad idea.
I think we have
Wood
a
chips.
combination of wood chips and planters, and where it's fixed planters, and otherwise it's decorative rock.
Yeah, I would like to discourage the use of wood chips anywhere, especially in areas where public areas, because they do harbor scorpions. When I go out in the desert hiking at night with my black light, all I have to do is look into decayed cholla skeletons, and man, you see scorpions. They love that
Okay.
wood.
It's only in the 3 back planters. So if the deco rock is the preferred option, quite honestly, I'd leave it dirt. So,
Yeah,
Curious,
right,
yeah.
right.
but we use crushed
Um,
pecan shells in the TCC itself, and it's been very beneficial, I think, overall for
I
the
like
plant
that
material.
idea.
What's that?
Yeah, I like that idea. With regard to the lighting, Mr. Architect, I understand that you're going to use those, the big guys, but tell me again why you're not using the historic globe lighting throughout here. Why didn't you choose that?
We're not reproducing the historic lighting. It's just, it was a very specific used in the context of the Central Plaza and the TCC renovation in the 60s. So I don't want to confuse that this part of the site was part of that 60s restoration. So it's about distinction from the historic Central
The
Plaza.
historic.
And then also just trying to get the lighting to vanish. Like a lot of it,
Right.
we have to provide some lighting for safety, and we want it to disappear as much as we can.
Right. I like the idea of that suspended light. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And could you point out where your pomegranates are, Eric? I didn't catch that.
We just
Where
have
the
one
olive-
that's It's in the northwest corner up by the kind of the new plaza of the site. Normally we would
The
do a citrus tree, but
northwest.
we already have citrus in the back.
Right
So
here.
there it is. Yeah, there it is.
Oh, you only have one pomegranate?
That's correct. We may have more with the garden plantings of the Mission Gardens, but again, we were not focusing
Yes.
on all fruit trees or anything like that. We were just trying to provide a blend of
Right.
species that reflect what of the campus itself, but also maintain some diversity and actually enhance the diversity of what the overall campus is going to be. Doesn't really provide, it's not really a big enough tree to provide a significant amount of shade. So I wouldn't use them a lot personally for that aspect.
I'm sort of missing the old historic where you have an alley of citrus, where you have an alley of pomegranates. It seems like there's perhaps a missed opportunity here to bring back historic plantings, which were really food production.
So our thought on that is, again, I think if you took it in the context of each Adobe dwelling or, unit, that each person would have different species for their own backyard interest and desires, and then they would share their fruit with the other neighborhood community for different species. And, some would grow orange, some would grow fruit, lemons, limes, figs, and so forth. And so we're trying to represent that would be the context of what this would really be. At least that's my personal thinking on it. Again, that's where we're trying to bring in Mission Gardens and saying, hey, look, if you have heirloom trees of X species of
The
quince or something, I don't know, I'm just throwing a, then that would be something that we would consider in the actual garden space. But I don't believe it would be like an alley of orange or citrus or whatever. That's from 50s and 60s and 70s, not back to Mario days.
Okay.
I would think.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Gabriel, can you take me to the that 4B? I want to see what that says about shade. I have a theory here.
Good thing.
It's me. Hang on. Where was the shade setting? Oh, there you go.
I wanted to see if there was something in there that called out materials or a definition of what sidewalks and pedestrian pathways were. Or the intent that it was more right away and sidewalk bait. That's it.
Chris, if you're going like where the street frontage of Main Street, I mean, that's an event space, not necessarily a walkway.
That's where I'm
But
headed, Eric.
in either case, it doesn't really help. We don't
that.
have enough walkway on our site to not provide the shade and still get the 50%. We looked at this in many different aspects, and
Right.
It just doesn't work with what's there.
Well, what I'm looking at is within the spirit of what I think this section is really providing is that when you have pedestrians in a mobility function, when they're moving from place to place, that they have a shaded way to get there. Where, I mean, if we tried to provide 50% shade to that big rectangle of space, it would kind of ruin that space functionally. Like, what's our line on this 4B as far as holding the standard of 50% shade?
Yeah.
For a pathway and pedestrian movement where, a pedestrian can walk through that space, but is it your pedestrian movement space? I think if we can take this idea and move back to your actual graphic, your pedestrian spaces are actually, in my opinion, fairly limited on this site.
We would concur. Basically, it's north of our site and south of our site, which is why we pulled in the old PAD shade study for the overall campus. And
Right,
I mean,
right.
actually, both those walkways will be, over time will be fully shaded with the hackberries. I mean, that the 8-foot walkway that we added on the north side of the road, or north side of our site, ultimately will, those hackberry trees and mesquite and other trees that are on the historical plowlet will fully shade that 8-foot wide walkway. And
So
on the south
my
side, that serves as a service drive and also a walkway access, but it's not an ADA compliant walkway itself. And
your keynote 7 walkway is what you're talking about?
Yep, correct.
So that would be my question, would be if you start approaching the shade in that manner, the sidewalk on the very far left, screen left, has 0 canopy addressing it. You're more addressing that angle versus that walkway, and your number 7 across the bottom would be opportunities to provide shade for true pedestrian movement. There are some opportunities we could, to maybe shift some trees around a little bit. I think unless there's a utility corridor running through there, on that far west walkway.
So yeah, that's what I was going to bring. So the north-south walkway on the west side, directly east of that is a vault that you can see kind of on the northeast corner there. Yeah, and that is the chiller. It's the whole infrastructure system for the entire campus. So we are staying as far away from that as we possibly can. That northern ironwood or olive tree is actually getting a little close for comfort. Is actually providing shade onto the plaza on the interior space, but we really can't put any trees any closer to that as it is. That you can see the concrete vault there. That's got
there's actually, I mean, under that sidewalk, there's a ton of utility going through that space between the chilled water lines, and there's some main TEP transmission lines across the site as well.
And that's a very old image. Just to bring up,
that's a very old image.
Completely changed.
Well, there's the new addition. There's new improvements for the parking lot directly west of that walkway, and you're directly south of your site. Right, is all new improvement for that parking garage project.
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah, the parking garage is now built, and that lot, the south lot is all accessible parking now.
And keep in mind, we put in over 700 trees back on this campus that didn't.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm trying to get the conversation with the board here a little bit about, compacted DG spaces versus concrete, and the shade component of what we consider walkways and pedestrian movement versus gathering in open spaces. And I personally think there's a distinction, and that's where I think we may want to highlight shade, application of shade, prioritizing it. Holding this entire site to a shade study would, I think it'd be detrimental to the spirit of what we're trying to do and the spirit of trying to maintain this visual, the visual component of a historic structure. Because that's really the one thing that I have on I think, if I wanted to boil this whole project down, the building's staying the same. You're doing a restoration, window frames, positioning, all those things all stay static. So a lot of the things that we normally talk about are, this is an improvement on an existing structure. We're not necessarily impacting the architectural context. I'm not an architect, so that's not 100% my expertise, but that would be my opinion on that. And that the remaining space is maintaining the visual aesthetic and quality of this entire site. And shade's the one thing on our list. Shade and lighting, I think. Michael, you're adding the lighting on there manually in this presentation. Do you have that within overall packet or within your, I'm sure in your development plan, you have a full lighting plan worked out, right? You just didn't have it here, or?
No, we need to get that drawing. That will be part of our resubmittal for our DP and our building permit.
Okay.
But that is what we're moving forward with, right? You're not changing.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what we're moving forward with. What we're showing you today is what we're doing.
And the suspended lightings are a single fixture suspended light, right? They're not you know, bulb light, yeah, the rope bulb lights that are all the rage right now.
Correct.
Okay. I was actually just in Rome earlier this summer, and that was a very popular lighting style there for the street lights on strings with the light in the middle over the center of the street. So I think
it's a very cool thing.
It's pretty cool looking. Yeah. It's really kind of striking, especially if you have a long vista of them. So
right. And we thought to do that, and then because then also places it in historic context and creates these education opportunities. It just all these things tie back and forth with one another.
Right. So those are kind of my concerns. I want to bring it back over to the group. Paige, you have your hand.
Yeah. Thank you, and please let me know if you can't hear me. I wanted to go back to what you were talking about regarding the shade study. Chris, were you? My understanding is that we should really be looking at the pathways and shading those at 50% versus these open plaza spaces, and that we can interpret the design criteria where it says 50% of all sidewalks and pedestrian pathways as literally being the sidewalks that move through the space and not these larger open plaza spaces. Is that what you're saying?
I'm kind of leaning towards that, because the way I've always interpreted and the way we've looked at these is parking's parking. They have their own shade requirements, and the way that's written is it's the pedestrian movement. So it'd be what, in my opinion, looking at it's this keynote 7, the concrete around keynote 5, that whole plaza space, because that's more of a pedestrian movement space, even as it was performed with Michael's presentation. You have your access ramp from the parking, you run that central spine all the way right up to the front door. You know, those types of spaces I think really need to be our priority on the shade. Providing shaded spaces for people to sit and recreate are also commonly important. So the seat walls, benches, things like that. I'm having a challenge including these large DG spaces within that shade study.
Yeah, and I agree with that direction. Is if the shade study focused more on the circulation through the site as opposed to these gathering spaces, and then looking at possibly adding more trees to support those areas. Because I know that there's you've got those 3 olive trees on the west. I don't know if there's a reason that they're spread as they are, but there could be a 4th to the south, or maybe along that. I just see more opportunities for trees buffering this corridor that goes west to east, and then that sidewalk on the south border as well.
Paige, can I interrupt one second along that?
Yeah.
You just brought up that number 7 walkway. Eric, is there along those accessible spaces there between the sign and that sidewalk, is there any trees in there from that other project?
There's not
any trees in there.
Yeah. Oof.
I'm
I'm agreeing.
there. It's not wide enough, really. That's the problem.
Yeah.
It's not 4 foot
sorry,
wide,
Paige,
and to put a tree in a smaller than 4 foot wide space is not beneficial.
Paige and Chris, I am, now that I'm seeing what you're talking about, I am agreeing with you guys. I think we
Oh,
could,
it's not,
it
it's
could
not
be,
installed the way it's drawn on this plan, Carol.
Huh?
I'm just
What?
looking at an aerial that,
I'm looking at the planting plan. We're talking about shade.
yeah, but the space between that, on the south side of that number 7 walkway is, yeah, Eric, that's not really plantable. The signs
Okay.
are all there.
Yeah.
There's a strip of concrete there that's not part of this project that they're not showing.
Okay.
If we thought we could add more shade trees, guys, I would. We just think that with the
Yeah.
context of the historical reference, visibility to the Social Security house and providing shade and working with the locations of all the existing trees that we are trying to maintain, which is basically all of them except for that little citrus that's in the middle of the street, and also the nutleaf hackberry, we would add shade trees.
Right.
But we just
so
don't have.
So on your shade study, Eric, are you showing those trees at this full maturity size? Or are you showing them as your symbol sizes here are not representative of what's existing?
What?
Yeah, I guess we could have shown them a little bit bigger than what they are. I mean, the ironwood would have been probably 25 foot in diameter. We're probably showing it about 15 at the moment. So
yeah, I mean, if you're short on shade, I'd be itching every piece I could to get shade to talk out better.
In either case, we just thought we were splitting the line with the, saying, look, we, per the context of the PAD, we are in excess of the shade study requirement. But I mean, we could look at that.
Yeah. Paige, I interrupted you. Did you want to finish your thought? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just don't understand why there cannot be more shade trees at that existing just north of the existing, or I guess that's new sidewalk.
I agree, Paige. I agree. Yeah.
I know you're trying, is it the visibility to the house? Is why you're saying there can't be more shade trees closer to the west?
It's a PAD requirement to maintain visible access from Granada to Sosa Creek House. So adding more trees, I mean, we already, I think in some ways are already pushing that envelope, and adding more trees, I think would be detrimental to what we're trying to provide overall in the context of the historical conditions.
Yeah,
I guess what Paige, if I think I understand what you're saying is that, like, those 3 olives that are on the west side, their location is really almost in contradicting what you're saying there, Eric, is that they're the ones that are kind of blocking your view. But if you took those three olives and oriented them east-west along that south walkway, you'd eventually be providing canopy shade to that east-west walkway, but your view, you'd be almost opening that up to frame your view of the building. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Is that where you were going, Paige?
Yeah, I think that an array of trees along that walkway will not block visibility of the house, but actually provide shade, and that, you could maybe have trees where number 3 is, you frame that with the olive that's just southwest of it. You move that just south of that little kind of opening, that node there, to open up the visibility further. And maybe you put 1 tree instead of 2 olives at the number by the seat wall and number 8, to open up that visibility and still providing shade. So it just seems like that southern edge could be shaded up, and that would help improve shading full site in general.
Mm-hmm.
It's
so you're saying that
has to come out, but I understand it conflicts with, is this a new sidewalk that's going into the main plaza space? Is that location, is that existing or is that new?
That's existing, it's brick, we are replacing it with a concrete walkway.
Okay, and that runs right into the tree? Or we
What do you
just
mean?
don't want it? Well, there's that very large, mature net leaf hackberry on this existing on site. And
The
that's
existing
being
hackberries in the northwest corner of the DG Plaza in the middle of the street. So
okay.
we're
And you're
removing that one and putting in 2 netleaf hackberries on the west side to provide shade. Which I don't know why the shade study went from 2 o'clock to noon, but my focus is always afternoon sun, because that's when it, you know, is the most intense and builds up over time. But in any case, we are trying to shade the western side of things so that you are getting the benefits from basically 2 to 4 and later in the summer months, as opposed to the other times of the year. But that's my personal preference.
Right.
Yeah.
Putting
I
trees
think
on the
you have
north
an
side of a sidewalk isn't providing shade on the south side. It's just not going to happen. Not till it's, you know, a tree's 30 years old.
Well, and that's the kind of the beauty
Yeah.
of drawing circles on a plan. You can draw them for 2/3 maturity if you
Right.
wish, per our standards and codes, right? So we can play that game. I do think there's opportunities to maybe shift some trees around on here, Eric. You know, we could design it out for you, but I think there's an opportunity if you guys look at it. There's an opportunity to shift some trees around, and maybe how do I want to say this? If we as a board agree, or we are all on a common page about preference being to circulation and patterns versus these larger DG open spaces, I think your tree planting needs to reflect that balance or that preference too. And I think you have an opportunity to maybe shift some things around here to do that. You know, I'm seeing some areas that could, it's tough because you're drawing a line in the sand here too, right? With a property line where this is all also in the context of a larger overall space, right?
Yeah.
And that's a detriment to the way codes are written, right? We don't really consider what's outside this box that's arbitrarily drawn on this super large campus of the project you're working on.
Yeah, we're threading the needle in many ways and addressing again
and how much you're allowed to do outside of this square. Like I do see some planting, you know, down by that keynote 1 that looks like it's fresh planting, but it's, you know, technically off site. Is there an opportunity to put a tree in there that would help shade that big old concrete area you have there? You know, there's some things like that I see. There's some opportunities that you could reassess how you're shading these walkways and without totally redoing your planting. Like I'm totally in support of this idea, this concept, and the drawing so far as I see it. I just want to make sure we're holding this project to the standard we're holding, you know, the last project we looked at, and that we work together to help you find that common ground. To get
no, we agree. So the planting on the south side is only in the event that's all existing. That's what's there currently. In the event that when they regrade and re-prep for concrete connections and so forth on the south side there, that we're showing them replacing it if they wipe it out.
No, that little plant.
That plant palette represents a historical landscape that was approved, you know, 2 years ago based on that design. There was no trees in that space.
Well, I guess
that's
you guys don't.
That's because the overall camp.
Correct.
Michael, did you guys do a number? Did you anticipate this conversation as far as like just walkways? Because you were all nodding your heads when I was heading there. Do you happen to have that calc in your back pocket of like if we just did pedestrian pathways and not these big plaza spaces?
I don't think we have that calculation. I think our stance has always been this is part of the campus. So in my opinion, we're in compliance because this is not a separate property anymore. It's common ownership. Rio Nuevo owns the south half of this campus. They own this building. They own the Lot C garage. So, my statement of that is that we are in compliance. Yeah, this abstract box is not within this overall context of this TCC campus that this is now part of. So,
They've made that the real property is all real, is all constant now.
the ownership
There's
is
no
constant.
separation in real property.
So the way the TCC works, the only weird thing about the TCC is that the city still owns the music hall, the Central Plaza, and the Leo Rich Theater. Rio Nuevo owns the convention center, the arena, this site, and the Lot C garage and the Lot A garage. So that it is split in that way, but it's all operated together and it's under one operation. The city basically the city leases everything from Rio Nuevo, and then they have an operator that runs the entire site. So
I could see this. I could see that standpoint. I understand where you're coming from.
I do think we could, I can move a couple of the olive trees around, but that's about all we would look to move around in the context of what you guys are bringing up. I appreciate the discussion. It's not something we've been able to just like have an answer to. You guys know we presented, I was on the board, so shade studies and all that stuff is something that we've been pushing from day one. And this site just does, with what our program and what we're trying to do historically wise, does not really feed itself to providing shade in addition to all the other trees that are currently on campus on the north and south and so forth. So, and I don't think we can get there. I don't think we can get the 50% shade regardless of what it is. But I'll look at it.
we would like a path forward. I guess that's what we would like.
Yeah.
And we're not expecting you to design this. Obviously, we just need to know, if we can get some kind of an approval. If you want to, I'm not sure what the pathway is, but I guess we need to finish the conversation first.
Would it be helpful to define the area that needs to be 50% shaded?
Well, I think Michael, I'm hearing your standpoint on that, and I'm torn as to this is the improvement area that we're working on, so that's the area we should focus on. But I also understand your standpoint of like that. If we're looking at an entire property, even if looking in the context of the project we were just looking at, or prior to this one, the improvement to that was just a little tiny piece of that. But we looked at the entire property for that shade study that they worked on. We've done that in the past where, it can be a small improvement, but the entire, we're looking at the entire space as being part of that study. And if we want to pull that context in, the entire site of this project is the TCC, is the whole place. That becomes very challenging. If you were at 48% on the TCC, we're looking at adding trees over by the historic fountain to make for this project to work, right? You know what I mean?
We're 56. We're 56% on the campus.
Yeah. But I guess hypothetically, like if you decide to open to the whole campus and show, if you were deficient, let's say if on this project you were doing this piece of the project, but you claimed the whole campus, where we on our end said, well, the whole campus is now your project, and you were deficient. Now this project is spurring planting, a quarter mile away.
Right. Yeah.
And that seems to be onerous to the spirit of of what we're trying to do with these Rio Nuevo guidelines.
I think that we ought to look at this as a site-specific shade study, or else we're opening a big can of worms. And think about it. We want shade for comfort. We want to invite people into this space. That's the reason for the shade. So I think we should look at this site and the percentage shade specific to this particular project. I like Paige's idea of looking at that south sidewalk, perhaps fitting in shade trees along the south edge of the old Main Street Square Plaza area, and also the idea of taking a couple of those olives and running them east-west. I don't know, shade's so important in today's climate. We want to create healthy, walkable communities. How do we do that? Shaded sidewalks.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that, but this is also, none of these are primary sidewalk, primary paths. And
Well,
this is a,
I'm
But they
sorry,
are
but
to the house.
I think every little bit of shade counts onto concrete, urban heat island, remediation.
no, I appreciate that. Again, I think our challenge as the design team was balancing all of these different criteria.
Yeah.
It's always the challenge. It's obviously
It
it's,
is. It's hard.
and that's why, like in the PRS motion, they specifically, said, I mean, that's why they put in that language about the plantings being appropriate. Because we brought this up to them as well, that we were deficient on the shade study, and they were trying to help us with our justification for that, if anything else, by adding that to the motion. Simply just, they were just stating that for their purposes, this is within context and appropriate. I know that's not your criteria that you review under.
Right.
So
I think of people being comfortable outside in the summer. How do we do that shade where they're walking?
Well, I guess so. The compromise I think I'd like to see, or maybe see where this lands. Could you provide a quick revised shade study for just this site that focuses on that major east-west walkways and
It goes up to the house.
the number, your keynote number 3, that concrete area
I'll look
around
at that.
around the fountain, and
Yeah.
this number 1, the one that goes along the south side, and the spur roads that that spur up to the north. And in reality, if we're looking at this in that context, we stay inside this box. But that isn't how we've always calculated that with the, if we look at a site downtown, the right of way is part of the project, and we calculate that as part of the project.
yeah,
It's from
but
curb in, right? So
there is no right of way in this project. So anything anything outside of the property line is.
Yeah, we're in this weird spot, right, Michael? We keep coming back around. Like, what do we define this edge at? Because if we do that, then we take off this whole north-south walkway on the west, and I don't think there's any achievable way to really provide shade on that thing with the utility corridor through there. And yeah, I'm stuck on how to direct you, other than I would personally like to see that. I think you guys make it if we as a board give the reprieve that these number 10 spaces, number 10 keynote
are excluded from the shade study.
Can be excluded from the paving criteria in the shade study. I think you guys hit it.
But
I
Chris,
need to see that.
Chris, the central access walkway between the number 10s, going back to Paige's comment.
Number 3, the concrete.
Yeah, number 3.
Yes,
yeah,
yes, that one. Yes.
So you want that shade? I'm just trying to clarify
Correct.
here.
Correct.
So
Anywhere
shade.
where pedestrians are moving from point A to point B, and not their primary use of that space being gathering. Except for keynote number 4 is paved with hardscape pavers. So and it has a connection to it, so it actually becomes a de facto pedestrian zone, in my opinion.
Right. And I think we can shade that one. Like, we don't want to shade 10 because that's a garden. We want that to be a garden, the one on the west.
Right. Right. Well, and it's
plaza
DG
is the street, so we don't want it. Right. Gotcha.
I mean,
I'm agreeing.
In theory, you guys could take those keynotes off and just leave that as open space and not call it out as anything. It's just a DG zone, and then it's no longer part of this purview.
But
if you really wanted to play the game, yeah. So how Cade and Grady you guys have been quiet in this discussion, or do you have opinions here?
Yeah, can we take a look at the actual shade study? I think it's page 30 of the applicant's document. I'm concerned that if we do make that distinction there, it would still require some reworking just based on that layout. I think there's a valid argument to be made that all of this is internal to the site, based on where the streets are, as opposed to considering this individually. I think it could go either way. What do you think, Cade?
I think I'm fairly new to this process, but I was trying to figure out before we had this meeting, like how this would be approached. I think Chris is trying to solve a problem for, I think he's trying to suggest a path forward that sort of meets in the middle, and I think, I'm open to that. I think, for me, I walk a lot, I bike a lot. I've lived downtown my whole life in Tucson, which is 22 years, and I think there's never enough shade. Doesn't matter where I am.
Yeah.
And it's getting better, but, I don't know that I answered your question, Grace.
Well, yeah, it was more just if you guys had any thoughts just from a, site planning or context of this board. Can we look at that? Is it the existing shade study?
Yeah. Hey, Gabriel, can I share so I can mark it up a little bit? Maybe we can clarify a few things. Thanks.
The other thing I was wondering about it, the shade study for the full campus is from that 2020 DP. I think we haven't updated that to reflect the additional trees on this site. Is that right? So that number 56 may be actually a little bit higher at this point.
It would actually go down because we have, depending on what you're defining as your surface area, if we're going to count the stabilized DG or the pavement. So we're at 36. It's going to go from 56. It's actually probably not going to change it in the percentage wise from hardscape.
Okay.
Because it's just the amount of hardscape on the overall site in the PAD compared to this is so insignificant, even though it, as Carolyn, it's very significant, right? So we're not, discounting this by any means. We're just trying to say, look, guys, this is where we stand on it. And we believe we have met all the intents of the PAD and all the criteria of historic and design review board and so forth based on that collectively. I think that's the biggest part that I would express, is that if you factor in all the elements, we are meeting the intent of the collective whole.
Michael, is that you drafting?
Yeah, that's me.
One more walkway at the front door.
Yeah, we're not going to be able to shade that one. There's no way.
Yeah.
But we'll
Yeah,
include
Part
it.
of the
Too close to the
part of the
building.
overall.
Okay.
What about the backyard? Or do we not do that because that's a patio space? Just clarifying.
Well, that's included in under the rooftop, and even all the, the fig trees and all that stuff, that's all added in that shade. And that gets back to like, well, what type of trees and all stuff really provide shade and not. Well, in some cases I'm taking advantage of that, but that's not really representative of what's a reality.
Yeah. No, it's not where people are walking, where we want them to experience the comfort of shade. So I like the red outlines that you did, Michael. Let's put shade along them.
Yeah, I mean, the challenging one is this south walkway.
correct.
It's just, there is no place to put trees on the south side of that.
No.
So that's 50% of your hardscape right there. So we would never get to that number.
So if we put
the
tree.
The argument, Eric, is that if you look at even your shade provided typical, the one you point at, if you move 2 more olives just to the west of that with the same canopy cover that you're talking about there, that's what we're talking about. That's where I'm like, there's some shifts and some moves you could potentially make on this property or on this planting plan to better address the
I
shade
understand
along
that, but I'm
pedestrian,
saying us
you know what I mean?
moving those 3 olives around is not going to get you to what you think you're getting. We've looked at this in many aspects, and
Well-
we're not going to get to 50%. I'm just up front. There's too much hardscape on the south side that's existing, and around the water feature itself, we're not going to get to 50%. It's
But
not
you'll
going to
get
happen.
closer, Eric. You'll get closer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What's your goal? What is our goal overall?
50%.
If our goal overall is meeting the intent of the PAD, the design board, historic, and context, we have met and exceeded all those requirements across the board.
What year was the PAD done? I'm just curious.
PAD's old or new.
It was updated. It was updated when right before the hotel was built, so it has been revised. Would have been in like 18 or 19, but it was originally written in 85, I think.
Yeah,
And that's why it was silent on so many things, which is why we're
Right.
here.
August 3rd, 1990 or 1987.
Yeah,
wow.
but it should have been. It was revised, I think. And like I know it was revised in 18 or 19.
Well, to me, the more important thing given today's climate situation would be shade than hard adherence to do not block views to the building, PAD sighting, you know?
Historically,
We gotta,
it wasn't.
that's a delicate needle.
Yeah,
Because
I know.
that view shed criterion is really likely coming from SHPO and not necessarily from a PAD or from, that's probably likely from that's a main criteria when you register a building is visual access.
Yeah.
So I don't want to,
Okay,
Eric,
okay.
I think the conversation we're having is we want to try to figure out a way to thread the needle with you guys and adhere to our spirit of our criterion, which we hold some projects to that standard that potentially is detrimental to them almost a little bit, where they it's a little bit overbearing, but we hold all our projects to that standard. I think the thing that we're stuck on currently is whether it's these red boxes or whether it's the whole Rio Nuevo campus. And man, I'm stuck as far as that, because I think the spirit of what you guys are doing, I think you're doing with Eric. We could get a couple minor shifts and hit some things. I think I'm personally there. I think I think the balance can be there. But it's this overall versus this. If we're talking overall, the last half hour has been moot.
I concur, Chris. I would like to put more trees where I think, again, we can move those olives around and maybe add 1 or 2, but I just still don't think we'll get those numbers based on.
Because I really think it's this south walkway that's drawing the most consternation here. It's so
Understood.
stark and open. And if we could get at least some sort of even the psychology of shade, of that
Sure.
there's trees adjacent to it, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Mhm.
I agree, Chris.
Does that work, Carol? Is
Yeah,
that idea?
it does. It
and
does.
and-
It's every little bit counts.
And for
Absolutely.
some reason, I want to pop a big planter in the middle of that big expanse of concrete that's kind of makes that weird wedge shape where your public hardscape leader line goes to. In the middle of that east-west walkway, there's
Yeah, why?
really
I had a question about that. Why is that so? I understand you're drawing the line to the edge of the house and making that opening, but can that part of the sidewalk be made more narrow? And therefore
No.
that would allow some space for trees along that, let's call it the south edge of the old Main Street Plaza.
We didn't talk
No,
about that, Michael, so I'll own that. And that's one we didn't bring up, but so that is a service drive to allow vehicles to get back to the Sosa Career House and
okay.
park like a food truck or what, not a food truck, but a event truck, and servicing the Social Security House and its activities. Furthermore, the TCC staff uses that walkway that Michael just drew in there is the primary circulation route for service vehicles. So the walkway itself right now is like 5 feet wide on the south side, and it's going to get increased to 10-foot wide because of the request for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that.
I have a question about the SHPO requirement regarding view shed, because is there clarity or specificity on that? Because my understanding was it's more about walls and not necessarily plant material.
Oh, so
Yep.
well, it's incredibly vague because it sorry, it is written into the PAD. It's one sentence, and it simply says we have to maintain a view of the front of the house from Granada Avenue. So it's not, it may have come from a historic comment when they wrote the PAD originally, but it is written in the PAD as a statement, and it's about that simple. There is no further clarity.
Right. It doesn't say you need 53% visibility from 2 feet off the ground.
Right.
Right. So if you have trees
from, I mean, it's so far away from Granada.
Yeah.
That the existing, I don't understand how you can really have a great view shed from Granada. Is this for pedestrians or cars? I just really want to challenge this view shed as far as it prohibits tree planting when it's I could measure it on the Google Maps quick, but it seems
it's a good couple 100 feet, right?
Yeah, it is visible though, and so the thing with a pad is that is like a hard condition of the pad that must be met. So there isn't a lot of leeway on that, because that would require a modification of the pad itself, which is an entire basically analogous to the rezoning process.
But I think, Paige, the point you're trying to make is that you don't block the visibility from Granada via 6-foot opaque wall or screen versus having a landscape context in the front, right? Is landscape context considered obstruction?
That's your view right now, and there's a ton of trees there, and they're all pruned up.
Hard to understand.
Sorry. Going back to this, what you're showing on the screen as far as the view of the house, you can see that there's just a lot of tree canopy existing, and it's all pruned up to, it's really hard to see that view. I know.
No, I don't disagree with you. It's just a pre-existing condition we'll have to deal with.
I'd also add that during the presentation of it on the TCC campus itself, I don't know if it was really Granada, but it was more like having visibility connections to Tumamoc Hill and A Mountain were the key points. We actually had to move 2 historical components to be direct visually aligned with that. So it's again back to the overall context of the PAD with historic and what we're looking at. That's we're trying to bring all that into play. I mean, I think now you're getting into, in some ways, the idea of like, a shade tree blocks signage. Well, guess what? Move 2 feet, it doesn't block signage.
Right.
So what are we providing more shade? That we're in agreement, trying to move those olives around. I think we can add a couple of trees on the south side there, and maybe rearrange something like that and see where that stands. But I still don't think just the square footage will get to 50%.
But we'll get closer.
Well, I think this is something this board has had a challenge with in general, in that there have been other projects in this similar context of a historic area, and that the project area was a part of a larger context, but we held that smaller area to that number, and it held up projects. I know the Presidio project that came through this board earlier this year had that challenge. It was a hearing I had to recuse myself from being involved in that project, but I know that project had challenges, meeting 50% shade and defining what the shade, and that was in all of Presidio neighborhood. If you took all of Presidio neighborhood as the context of the project, it's a 80% shade, but the sidewalks that project was directly adjacent to, this board required those to have 50% shade coverage within those work areas. So I think the context of what we're trying to do is the precedent is starting to be there that where you're impacting a site is the area that we're wanting to see the providing of shade for pedestrian movement areas. And even if I'm stuck on the idea that it's the whole Rio Nuevo campus as the site, but there's also precedent that of sub-sites or site within a site being the indicator of what gets shaded and not. I think what I'd like to here's what I'd like to do. Trying to figure out how to word this, that I'd like to see that number of what that red area of what Michael, what the areas you just did here with two conditions, Eric. Let's draw those existing trees at their true canopy.
Yeah.
Because that's the existing condition you're shading. You're not shading to a CAD symbol of these symbols. CAD symbols for these other trees are at minimum 2/3 of their mature. If you want to show mature, I'm okay with that. And let's look and take a minute to look at it and see if there's a way to address this south, east, west walkway in a little more direct and direct way. And I think you guys are going to be able to hit it. It may require a couple more trees, Eric. And I think the argument of putting too many trees in here to provide this shade is providing a block to the visual component. I think we're going to be, as far as our board goes, I think we may be in agreement that having landscape and additional trees is not obstructing the view of that building. And that, especially with that giant plaza directly to the west of it, if someone wants to see this building, they can come up to that plaza and look at it. How the rest of the board, how are you guys on that? I think that's the main point, and I don't want to hold you guys up. So that's where I'm stuck, is how to that happen without causing another month of timeline for you guys.
Can you make a recommendation for approval with the revised shade study and plant adjustment to show compliant 50% shade of the heights hardscape, the sidewalk hardscape, directly identifying the primary walkway to the Sosa Cree house?
I think I would be I could be persuaded for that with opinions of the rest of the board.
Eric, but you've been stating all along that you're not going to make the 50%. You just said that you would accept the condition of 50%. That means you're going to have to make it.
Well, you've told me to upsize my tree size so I can cover it.
Yeah. I think you have it, Eric. I think you guys are playing too conservative on that from a without
we've always, I mean, I don't like to, so look,
we want a budget.
I'm not one to change for one project to another project. We always draw our plant materials basically 60% to 70% of actual maturity, because we know on commercial levels it gets maintained to like half that. So that's, false representation. So we try to be as authentic as possible, and I don't play that game of just for this project to that project, moving that around. And so it's more of us just trying to maintain a level stance, not just myself, but also just our whole staff then, right? To say, this is how we are focusing on all projects. And that was the direction on this one. It's like, look, this is it. You know, does an ironwood get to 25 feet? Yeah, it can. You know, ideal conditions, it can get, but it can stay as 18 too. So, you know, that's what we're playing around with. An olive tree can get the olive that's in the Central Plaza. That's a 40-foot canopy.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
Eric,
been there
Eric,
for since 1970. So
industry standard and City of Tucson code is plants are drawn at two-third maturity, right? So
yeah,
that's the direction. I think those existing trees are scaled small for you. I don't think they're true canopy of what they are currently or what they're going to maintain.
Right.
I'm trying to find areas where you could represent those trees at their true size currently in existence. That's not an exaggeration of reality or pushing the limits of what this code is for. So I think you may have the opportunity there with a couple extra trees. You could get there. So without being
we'll find a way to get to what you're trying to get to
without being unethical, Eric. I don't think there's a way to do this where we're not pushing the limits of being fudgy. I think there's a true
the olives are showing at 20 foot right now. The existing trees are showing at 20 foot, so those can increase, and that would be that get us there. It's the mass of concrete on the south side that really makes it difficult.
Be tough. But I think show your maybe pull your utility offset through there. I think that would be something that could be very graphically popular to show. Like, but I think those are the I'm not going to tell you where to put the trees, but I think that those ideas would be appreciated by this board. But I think the thing I'm stuck on with us is how to process this for you, whether we need to convene again to look at that drawing, or if this group is willing to accept putting your hand on a book and raising your hand that you're going to provide that information in the best way possible to the next board.
And just let me add a little bit of context here. So you are our last stop. So we've been approved by Landscape Subcommittee and by the PRS. So, obviously we go to PDSD next. From a schedule standpoint, we are a little bit pressured here because we have a grant that we need to spend this year. So if we get delayed by, 4 or 6 weeks, that could have some consequences for us. So, and I understand we have to go through the process, but if there is a way for us to, somehow create some assurance that we
calendar, Michael, this fiscal or calendar.
Oh, yeah, that's tight. Whew.
You guys always land on our docket like
I'm sorry, 25. Sorry, it's 2025 calendar.
Oh, 2025. Okay.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say.
But that's to complete the project. I mean, there's a whole lot of work to do here.
Fully expanded by then, right?
Right. Which is why, if there's a way for us to move, at least approve the the hardscape and everything else, and if we can come back, the concern I have is that if we revise the landscape, I have to go all the way back to the Landscape Subcommittee, back to PRS, and back to you, and that could take 3 months or 2 months.
Even if you just adjust locations
of the trees, yeah. At least for the Landscape Subcommittee, but I think once I don't know, Gabriel, you can chime in. Once we restart the process, I think we have to go see everybody again.
That'd be a Maria question, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So we're completely willing to work on this and improve it, but is there also a way that we can at least move forward the rest of the project so we can start?
Yeah, it is a nasty spiral, isn't it?
Yeah.
And is there a way that you guys could provide, basically say, if we provide the 50% shade, that you're in favor and approval of this plan? And we can email it out to everyone, showing the shade study and the revised planting design to show compliance with that, and make it just a condition that that's the requirement. Because I don't know if we need to really meet and represent this to all the different committees. If we just say, here's an update based on the feedback that we got from 3 different committees.
Yeah, that's the public meeting law part of that, Eric. We can't transmit information via email. It needs to be in an open forum that's published or publicized that we're meeting to discuss this project. So that's why those set up, at least in my understanding, that's why that's that way. Like,
so the shade study itself is part of the PAD, is part of the development package. If we're updating that, which also is the landscape plan, that is a public forum that everyone can review and approve and accept.
Yeah.
And we're not having a formal meeting on it. We're just updating the information based on all the feedback from all the different committees.
Right, but you can't send an email to this committee.
No, I'm saying we're submitting a revised development package with the updated shade study, with the updated planting, and then each person on the committee can go and take it on their behalf to dive into this and saying, yep, you're compliant, no objection.
Well,
I think in the past we've had city staff validate that when it comes back in, right? Where Maria would be the one responsible for verifying.
Correct.
Yeah, if it's written as a condition of approval, we can go and we can check to make sure that they're meeting that condition.
It becomes a condition of approval for that development package. If we add it as a condition to our approval here, it becomes basically part of code requirement standards that Eric and team would have to meet before they get their building permit.
Yes.
Yep.
So we in theory, Eric, you're de facto board giving us board direction, which is you know where you're from. Like you've been in our seat before. So I think I'm kind of in line with where we're headed here, is that if we can pass this through with a requirement that there's some adjustment to the tree locations to provide shade to some of these walkways. I mean, there's other projects we've made come back, but we've had them come back on it's just this holiday schedule right now is going to be the kicker, right? Like that's time.
I think one way this plays out, if you're able to do that, is that if we do submit something that's less than 50%, we're not going to get a permit, which kills us anyway. And B, if we're just stuck and we can't do it, then we will have to come back, right?
Correct.
So I think that, if that's an approach you can be comfortable with, if you can approve, with the condition that we need to meet the 50%, and
but I think the condition we add, the caveat on that is the condition we're adding is that it's a paved circulation walkways or some criterion, right? And that's the thing that we're trying to add for you guys. Because I think that makes everything a little better.
Is this the criteria you're talking about? I mean, can you include this sketch I just made? I can send this to Gabriel right now and include this as part of your motion.
We can. This is all part of public record, so
right.
I would believe we can screen capture this.
Yeah. By the way, Mr. Architect, I love when you drew them in red. It looks so ECBO. It's awesome.
I've been on this campus for almost a decade, so
Michael's a closet landscape architect. He really is.
It's in your blood. That's great.
Okay, let's move. I think let's move along on this. I'm feeling like there's not a whole lot of concern here of what we're doing, or are we as a board, the rest of everyone here on the board, are we feeling okay with this direction that we're headed, or is there any concerns we need to express?
I'm okay with it.
Okay, I think we're ready to let's motion this thing through and add a pretty good condition on the back end of it that holds you guys' feet to the fire a little bit. It's a little odd off of what we normally would do, but I think the conditions here are special and site specific enough that they warrant a little bit of interpretation of what our rules are, right? So I feel comfortable doing that and chairing the meeting and chairing this committee to move in that direction. So if someone wants to try to cobble together a motion for that, let's figure out.
Yeah, I've got an idea. I'll try it, Chris.
Yeah, I think the main concerns that we want to do is that the shade study is site for this work construction area, and that it's focused on circulation and hard paved surfaces within this site, within the boundaries of this site, as defined in the attached drawing that we're going to provide. Something around those two. Does that line up with what you were talking about, what you had in your notes, Carol?
Yeah, I didn't have this confined site, this site specific to the project.
Within the boundaries defined on that within
Okay.
this presentation.
Okay. Okay. So this may take a bit. The design review board has reviewed the applicant's project for compliance with Rio Nuevo area design criteria and recommends to the Planning Development Services Director conditional approval, finding the project in compliance with the building standards set forth UDC with the following conditions. Number one, a conditional requirement of 50% shade is met on the paved circulation sidewalks as delineated by the applicant's project boundaries. As delineated by the applicant's project boundaries, and or refer to the red line drawing submitted by the applicant to define the areas specified as paved circulation sidewalks. Period. Thank you, Gabriel.
No worries.
I'll second that. Get a vote. Any further discussion, amendments?
Nope.
Eric, are you good with this?
Oh, yeah,
Doesn't
no.
matter, Eric, anymore.
I'm fine with it.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I was just trying to be nice.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
No discussion. Let's vote on that. Everyone in favor? Ayes?
Aye.
Aye.